Here you can see the worst test I wrote in a long time. What I want you to do is find all the issues you can. To give you a bit more details, it's a simple to-do app made with Express and Prisma, which is created here. It has two endpoints, one post to create to-do and another get one on the same path to get the list of all created to-do. You can pause this video if you want and try to find what's wrong with this test. The first one is quite obvious. We are testing multiple behaviors in the same test. They should be split into two separate tests. I can separate it right now with one test for the response of the request and one test to verify it has been saved in database. Let's skip the first test and extract the second expect. But there is a new issue with this test. Even if test pass, what do you think will happen if we remove the first test? Obviously, the second one will fail. That's why tests must be independent and what we have to do right now. To make them independent, let's group them in a success use case. There, instead of making the request in the first test, we can move it in a before all. We need to use the response body in the next test so we can save the response itself. We don't need the first test to be async anymore, and now they should be independent. Here we could change the expect for the status code to be 201 in another test instead of a before all. You have two choices, either do it here to have an early failing test, or do it in another specific test. On my side, I like my test to fail early if needed to, so we'll keep it here. The third issue with this test, which is probably the most important, is to avoid implementation details. As I said, I'm using Prisma with this app, which is mocked here. First, I had to write kind of a sketchy mock here, and I'm testing the behavior of Prisma itself in my last test. It's something I would like to avoid doing, and there is one great solution, in my opinion, which is to use an in-memory implementation. Good news, I have a library for it called prismock, which I'm going to use and replace my mock with. That looks better, but I have to write the test that verify the to-do has been saved. Here, my app will behave as if it was connected to a real database, but the to-do will be saved in memory. Here, what we could do is to use the get to-dos endpoint and verify the created to-do can be found. Let's try it. Here, I need to verify the body of the response contain one to-do. or to be more precise, to verify there is the one created to do. Looks quite good. Let's have a look at our test results. Our tests are passing, but is the test I just wrote actually good? If I'm asking this question, it's obviously not. But why? Looking at this test, I want to ask you one thing. What's going on if our create endpoint works as expected, but our get endpoints actually has a bug? Then this test will fail, even though the create endpoint work as expected, and the to-do is actually being saved in the database. This is the fourth issue with this test, which is to rely on other functionalities. What we want to do is to verify the data is right, and we can because we have access to an in-memory implementation of Prisma. Let's do it now. What we can do is simply find this to-do with Prisma. We can do it, for example, with the title. Now we can expect it contains the right data. And now we verify this to-do has been saved, but don't rely on other functionalities. Before going any further, let's verify our test pass. Perfect, that's what I was expecting. And as a side note, keep in mind it's the same with the get to-dos endpoint. We will then create a to-do with the create endpoint before verifying it can be found. We would create it with our in-memory implementation of Prisma and making a request only for the get to-do endpoint. By the way, if you're interested in getting better at testing, I'm writing articles and teaching more in depth. Feel free to have a look, link in description. There is still one last mistake, which is often made, which is a bad organization for your test. We kind of improved it here with our specific successful use case and OB for all. But for example, we could rename the first test, which doesn't verify we create a to-do, but verify the created to-do is returned by the request. It's also the same thing with the main describe. I prefer to use for backend application the HTTP verb of the request with the pass. Also, this is a very simple test, but in more complex use case, you usually set up more data, mocks, do more changes, and more assertions. A good policy to follow is the arrange, act, assert. That's it, you are now able to write better tests that are easier to maintain.